Welcome to Leaving Academia, Becoming a Freelance Editor, the podcast. I'm your host, Paulina Cossette. Today's episode is extra special and is absolutely packed with information that will help you get started as a freelance editor or expand your business. Nicole Halper is a former high school physics teacher who became disillusioned with the bureaucracy of teaching and wanted to have a greater impact outside the classroom, especially in terms of social justice issues. 4 years ago, she took an editing course, created a profile on Upwork, and the rest is history. Her copy editing work runs the gamut from academic research to reports for nonprofits to business and website editing. The most important takeaways from our conversation are: if you're unhappy in teaching, you don't have to stay, and how to figure out if editing is right for you. Once you do find success as an editor, there are ways you can scale your business to continue to grow your income without spending all your time working, and how Nicole will be doing this in 2025 with an agency model. I absolutely loved our conversation, and I know you're going to enjoy all the valuable nuggets that Nicole drops about how to dip your toes in the water of freelance editing and how to build a business that's profitable and philosophically rewarding. If you find this episode helpful, please leave a review and share it with someone who might be interested in editing. And if you're curious about becoming an editor or coach, you can find out more by going to acadiaediting.com/become an editor. Now, here's my interview with Nicole. Welcome to Leaving Academia, Becoming a Freelance Editor, the podcast. I'm your host, Paulina Cossette. In 2019, I was a political science professor who was fed up with the stress and hostility of academia, not to mention the low pay. I left my tenure-track job and went from barely surviving to thriving as a freelance academic editor. Today, I own Acadia Editing Services, an editing and coaching business that brings in 6 figures a year. In this podcast, I'll discuss the challenges of academia, what academic editing involves, and what life as a freelancer looks like. If you're willing to jump outside your comfort zone, it is possible to find joy, true flexibility, and a profitable and rewarding career as an academic editor. Thanks for listening. So today on the podcast, we have Nicole Halper, who is a former high school physics teacher and now a full-time academic editor. Welcome to the podcast, Nicole.
Thanks for having me, Paulina.
So let's start off by, why don't you tell us about your background, why you left teaching and how you got into editing?
Sure. I started out my career as a physics teacher from about 9th grade through 12th grade. And I spent about 3 years doing that. Definitely gave me an appreciation for how hard teaching is. Definitely didn't appreciate that as a student. I had a lot of really good experiences connecting one-on-one with students and also connecting the curriculum to kind of real world implications. I tried to bring social justice into the curriculum and make sure that kids were learning how to critically think. A lot of the classes that I taught, I know those kids weren't going to become physicists or even go into careers that needed to learn physics. So I really tried to emphasize the practical applications of thinking about the physical world, and that was kind of my favorite part. However, like a lot of other academicians, I encountered a lot of bureaucracy and politics in the school system. I was teaching in public schools in New Jersey, and even in the best of cases, I don't know, I ran against like pushback, implementing some of these critical thinking and social justice aspects into the curriculum. And then as a new teacher, I felt I didn't have the support that I needed from my supervisors. In addition to that, I'm sure a lot of teachers can relate to this. Sometimes the parents were the worst part of the job. Like they would go over my head to my supervisors if their kids didn't get the grade on the test that they liked. And at the high school level, it can be very competitive because those kids are applying for colleges. They want to make sure their GPAs are high enough, la-di-da. So I transitioned out of high school. Didn't really seem like the age group for me. And a sort of support position hit. And unfortunately, my position was eliminated. So like a lot of people, I had to kind of face a choice of what I was going to do with my career. And totally by accident, I I came across freelance editing through a TV show called Being Erica. Like it was a Canadian show from the early aughts, and like it was so corny, but I saw this character got laid off from a publishing company, and she and her friend were trying to start a business. And in the meantime, she was like freelance copy editing and proofreading. And I was like, wait a second, you can do that? Like you can just be your own boss and like edit manuscripts. So I looked
That's so
into it.
funny. I would have never guessed it would be like glamorous enough to put on TV.
It was honestly, the show was so real, and I don't know if I recommend it, but it definitely came at the right time in my life. So I appreciate it for that. But I had always done like volunteer editing. Like I was on my school newspaper in high school, and I was always part of like the literary magazine whenever I could, like editing submissions and editing my friends' papers and resumes and all that. So it felt kind of natural to me to lean into that. And I really wanted to own my own business because when I first started out teaching, I was a substitute teacher, and I loved the flexibility of just like creating my own hours and kind of not being shackled to a desk at 9 to 5. And my parents are entrepreneurs, so I knew that that path was definitely a possibility for me. So I ended up taking like an online course, probably very similar to what you offer, Paulina, through Edit Republic. And that kind of taught me the basics of industry standards for editing and proofreading, just like how to read a style guide and kind of how to market myself. And I got my start on Upwork.com, which is like, for anybody out there who doesn't know, is like a crowdsourcing site. So clients can post their projects, and then you can like bid for them and apply. And eventually I started to get some bigger clients, and the rest is kind of history. So that was about 4 years ago.
Wow, that's so funny that there's the serendipity of seeing it on a TV show, and
Yeah.
I had a similar experience, or even as an academic, I had no idea that copy editors existed. And I discovered it when I was publishing my book and worked with a freelance editor, which was around the time that I was leaving my teaching job. So it's funny how things work out like that. But it sounds like, I think one of the common questions that people have is, how do I know if I'll be good at this? And I tell teachers and particularly faculty who want to go into academic editing that they already have the skills. We co-author, we do peer review, we've read all of this scholarly research. And so really, deep down what it takes for a paper to be written well, especially if you're, like you were saying, you have this history of just enjoying being, doing copy editing, even if maybe you didn't call it that then.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if you have any thoughts on how somebody else, maybe there's another teacher in that situation who is unhappy in their job, they're tired of the red tape, and they want to try something new. What are some tips that maybe, or things they can think about to know if they might actually be good at this, or this is the right path for them?
That's a good question. And I can't lie, like every 3 to 6 months, somebody in my professional network reaches out to me and is like, are you still an editor? Because like I'm kind of thinking about it. So a lot of people have the question. I have two thoughts. One is you definitely want to see if you like it before you like quit your job and jump into owning a business, because we can talk about this in a minute, but like owning a business is very difficult. And there are a lot of things that can make it easier, but it's a huge commitment and a lifestyle adjustment. So definitely proceed with caution. But one thing that I did that somebody had recommended to me when I was first starting was that I joined an organization that hired volunteer editors, two of them actually. One of them was Save the Water. So I did just, I volunteered to edit their blogs according to industry standards. And I worked with a team of writers and a team of editors. And it gave me a lot of good real world experience to see if I actually wanted to spend my workday doing this kind of stuff. And then the other one was, I'm forgetting the name, but it was like digitizing the Gutenberg project, like Word documents of books, see if you like it, if you like the process. It can kind of work out the kinks, and then you can get low stakes feedback from your organization, your clients, or even just like friends and family who are like publishing a blog. Or I found resume editing to be very easy to get into. That way, you're not putting anybody's money on the line, and you don't feel too guilty if you don't, meet standards.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. And so how did you connect with these organizations? Did you just contact them and you said it was a volunteer basis. So, or were they looking for a proofreader or?
I forget how I found them. I spent a lot of time just Googling and on websites, much like yours, Paulina, where like other editors were trying to teach other people how to become editors. One thing I will say for this industry is that everybody I've ever talked to who is also an editor is so helpful and kind, and like there's not like a fiercely competitive atmosphere. Like this phrase, all boats rise together, has been really true. So I have found a lot of just guidance through those kinds of blogs and websites.
Yeah, so I think that's a great, and actually I've had several people I've interviewed have commented about the community, the editors communities, and how supportive people can be. And like, there's not a sense of competition, we're all kind of sharing, if there's something I can't take on, I'll send it to you. And, it is very much a collaborative atmosphere rather than competitive. But that's a great suggestion. I think would also be good for either K through 12 teachers or college level instructors, just reaching out to nonprofits or maybe local organizations or even businesses and volunteering to try it out and just to see if you like it. And like you said, it's really low stakes because you're working for free, and you're just testing the waters to see if you like sitting at a computer, staring at the screen all day, and editing, because that's something else I suggest people think about is that's not for everyone, like you can get an under-desk treadmill and that will help, but it's kind of hard to type and walk at the same time. Anyway, so, and you mentioned that you also went on Upwork. So is that primarily where you get your work from, or how did that, what did that process of growth look like for you?
That's a great question. I'm a little ambivalent about Upwork, and Fiverr as well. They kind of go hand in hand. I am very grateful to Upwork because that is where I got my start. I'm top rated on there. I have like 100% success rate. At some point, the clients were asking me to apply to their projects. And in fact, one of my clients right now is basically who pays the bills. And that's like an ongoing contract. And that's through Upwork. But I'm just very cautious because Upwork has rolled back some of its freelancer protections over the years. Like they took away like phone support and stuff like that. And there are a lot of scams on there. So if you are looking to break into it, but not really sure how to start, Upwork is a good place. But I did so much research on what a proper proposal looks like, what kind of scam language to look out for. And I also read like an ebook on like an Upwork, a freelancer's guide to Upwork that taught me that I shouldn't lower my rates just because I'm not that experienced, like lowering, doing like a 300-page book for $150 is only going to worsen the market for everybody. It's not really going to benefit me. And I did also learn through some clients that the money is not the primary motivator for me. Like if there are red flags in the beginning, I really have to listen to those because it's just not going to work out. And then I think that goes into your point, which you just made about how other editors kind of pass work to each other. Because what I learned is like, there are projects that are right for me and projects that aren't, and there's no hard feelings about that. But I do recommend Upwork for some experience. It's also very low stakes. I mean, you can take down your profile if it's not successful, but it does take time. And I think a lot of people give up pretty easily. So if you're going to go that route, I would say give it a few months, make sure you're active on there, and eventually the algorithm will pick you up and you'll get some good reviews and hopefully have some success.
Yeah, I'm definitely one of those people who tried it starting out when I was first starting out and gave up too very quickly because
Yeah.
it just seemed like, it's hard. And this is totally understandable from the client perspective that, if you're somebody looking to hire an editor, you're going to go with the one that has the best reviews, and but even like I'm also on Readsy, and I have some
Mhm.
great all 5-star reviews on there, but I get a lot of inquiries, but hardly any projects because, like you said, I won't lower my rates, and I think a lot of the clients who go to these platforms are just looking, either they just don't
Mhm.
have the budget or they want to go with whoever gives them the lowest quote. And I'm at the point, thankfully, I'm grateful for this, but I'm not willing to charge 1 cent a word, plus Reezy takes the fee off the top. And
Mhm.
so yeah, so there I agree, there are some pros and cons. It is a way to get started, but also maybe not somewhere you want to be forever. So where
Yeah.
do you get a lot of your other work by referral, or where are you doing any other marketing, or how are you getting most of your clients these days?
Great question. Marketing is not my strong suit, but I do get some through referrals. I have also found it really helpful to go to like writing and publishing conferences. And usually they'll have like a book fair there where some authors are selling their books, but a lot of the times you'll get like academic presses or literary presses, very small ones, whether they're imprints of larger companies or just independent presses, and sometimes hybrid presses as well. Um, you'll have them there with their tables selling their books, and oftentimes they'll have like a managing editor at this FaceTime, and I've gotten some nice steady work through that. So if there's anything in your area, um, I recommend it, especially if you already started the business. You can write all of your travel off as a business expense, so it kind of reduces your taxes at the end of the year and is very valuable. I'm also part of some editing and writing networking groups. I think that's how you and I connected, Paulina, through LinkedIn. Uh, if you have a niche, like if you just edit academic work in the sciences, for example, you may want to join a networking group on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, where people who write that kind of content are. A lot of those groups have rules against like self promotion, but you can always like comment on people's posts and kind of make yourself familiar in the group so that people start to recognize you and will recommend your services. And then you can always cold call or cold email. I've definitely done that before. We send out mass emails to journals and presses saying, hey, this is my specialty. Can I get on your freelance editor pool? Just if they have, if usually these presses are so small or the journal staff is small enough that they kind of farm out the copy editing and proofreading to freelancers because they don't have the resources to keep those kinds of professionals on staff. So a lot of presses do that, and I've had some success with that as well.
Yeah, that's there, so it takes a little bit of hustle, right? Like it's not hard per se, but you do have to be willing to put yourself out there. And whether you're going in person to conferences and sending your or sharing your business card and walking up to people and talking, or looking through the book fair, like you said, or whether you're sending the cold emails, there's the
Mm-hmm.
possibility or the reality that you are going to get no, where the people are going to say no, they're going to reject you,
Mm-hmm.
but they're also going to say yes, right? Like,
Yeah. And
and
if you don't ask, they're already saying no. So if you ask and you're polite about it, you're not losing anything.
exactly. And, I try to emphasize to the people in my community that a no might be a not right now. Like I've sent so many cold emails to faculty and not gotten an email back. And maybe 6 months later, I see they've
Mhm.
replied to my initial email saying, hey, I have a project. Can you give me a quote? And so just because you don't hear anything right away, doesn't mean that they're not going to hire you. It just takes a lot of time, right? Because we don't all write
Yeah,
journal articles and books every day. So it has to come up in their calendar.
exactly. Exactly. I feel like until you need an editor, you don't think about it, but when you need it, you really need one. So it's good to kind of be in the back of people's minds.
That's so true. I think I've had that experience with the cold emails too, where I've emailed clients and they'd reply with something like, "Oh, wow, I never even thought of hiring an editor. Thanks for writing me." And so for some people, there's an education component where you are,
Mm.
they were like I was when I was a professor, that I had no idea that editors could help me with this work. And so you're contacting people who would otherwise never have heard of you or even looked for you, because they just didn't know it was an option.
Mhm.
I've also had people write me and say, "Oh, my editor's retiring and I need a new one." And so it's like they want to
Mhm.
start, this career-long relationship with you, which is always great.
Yeah.
So, why don't you tell us a little bit about, more specifically, what type of editing you do? Are you focused mainly in the sciences, or do you do a wider range of subjects?
Yeah, I do a wide range. I am one of those jack of all trades people that kind of jumps from thing to thing and gets bored pretty easily. No offense to anybody whose work I've worked on. But just because I have a physics background doesn't mean that's the only thing I edit. I do enjoy the social sciences and humanities. Some of my favorite projects have been for organizations that study like economic reform that helps lower income people. I've worked with dentists, neuroscientists. I edited somebody's literature review for his PhD who was writing about like the social dynamics of sorority girls in college. So that was really interesting too. I just edited a philosophy and religion book for a retired lawyer who was really interested in Judaism. So my academic stuff kind of runs the gamut, but I love editing tables and citations. So I personally am a poet and an essayist at Oklahoma Now. She just asked me to edit her poetry, so we're kind of working on that. And I also edit, blogs like marketing copy, pretty much anything that comes my way. If I were to describe my ideal customer, it's not necessarily what content they produce, but what their value systems are. Like I mentioned before, if I'm just in it for the money, it almost never works out. So I have to be working with clients whose goals with their writing are to advance social knowledge, implement some social justice perspectives, and kind of my goal is to amplify marginalized voices. So if you're in line with that, then I can adapt your needs to, or my expertise to your needs for sure.
That's fantastic. I think a lot of people are hesitant to leave teaching because we
Mm.
are, and I don't know how it is in K through 12, but definitely in higher ed, it's like you're sold on this idea that you have to give all of yourself, all of your time, all of your energy to your students because education is this noble cause. And of course it is. I mean, you don't go
Mm-hmm.
into teaching if you don't believe in the value of education. But at the same time, like, my mental health and my physical health and my family are also important. And so I think a lot of people are hesitant to leave teaching because we feel like we're not going to have an influence. We don't want to go work
Mm.
a 9 to 5 corporate job where we're just shuffling papers or whatever. And so it's great to hear you talk about how you can still have an impact on society, and share knowledge and, still take sort of an educational role, even though you're not a teacher anymore. And I think that's great because I agree. I find working on these projects so rewarding, to be able to dig into a book or a paper and improve it, and help the author get their message across. And then when it's published, to be able to share the work, with my network so other people can read it, is really fantastic. So yeah, I think it's great that you touched on that, how rewarding the job can be.
Yeah.
So what about, we talked about different subfields, but what about, do you do developmental editing as well, or do you just do copy editing?
Um, I focus on copy editing because that's my comfort zone. With the poetry, I definitely go deeper. I would say that's where I delve into developmental editing. Um, For projects where the writer is a non-native English speaker, which is often the case in academic writing, I would say that I'm more of a line editor, because I'm working at the sentence level, making sure that their syntax is on point, sometimes rewriting their words. But for the most part, yeah, just stick with copy editing, and proofreading. And I was actually just talking to a fiction author last night, and he was describing his, like, how he mapped out the plot of his novel, and I just felt so unqualified to give him advice. So I asked him questions about the plot, but that's not my jam.
Yeah, me neither. As a kid in elementary school, you were always like assigned a creative writing project, like write a short story or something. And even then, I hated it. I could write a book about, science or, something nonfiction, even as a kid. But anytime I had to come up with a story, it was like, this isn't me, it's just not in my brain. And so, yeah, I couldn't do fiction editing either. And also it's funny how people are different like that. Like I've talked to many editors who just dig into the developmental edits on, even in academic work and the book coaching and stuff. And for me, it's like, nah, I've done it, but I really love like the red pen, cleaning up the language and just catching the typos and all that stuff. So, tell us a bit more about your business and where now we're filming this in December of 2024. So we're at the end of the year. What is your vision for your business going forward?
That's a great question, and I may spend the next half hour talking about it, but please cut me off whenever I get boring. But I've been doing this for like almost, yeah, going on 4 years. I literally have not taken a vacation without my laptop since I started. So like, I definitely need to pivot. In the last year, I moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, because you need a reason where they literally pay you to move here. I had been looking for a place to live. And when I visited, so I've been able to take advantage of some of those networks and resources to get funding for the business, actually write a business plan. And I'm currently in an idea accelerator right now to develop a new service that's based on using AI technology, which I know will make some enemies, whoever's listening, to write nonfiction books for non-writers. So, for example, consultants who may have an expertise in HR or personal finance, and they work with clients one-on-one or businesses, and they want to add a book to their offerings. They may have brochures or blogs or content marketing or presentations, but they're not really writers. So I'm developing this service to help them write books using automated technology. So that's in the works right now. And overall, I'm kind of pivoting from like a solo entrepreneur model where I'm doing all the work. If I don't show up for work, I don't get paid. It's exhausting. To more of an agency model. So I've hired contractors in the past, but over the next year or so, I'd really like to bring on somebody, an editor, and kind of create more of a sustainable business for the future.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I love that you mentioned the local resources. That's something I've been thinking about recently is I am a small business, even though I'm a freelancer, and I'd never considered until recently exploring different grant options or, looking through the Small Business Administration, or I know locally we have, it's not an incubator, but it's some other like innovation center or something like that where they give talks that you can attend on Zoom, and I've used that before. But yeah, that's another great idea for people to think about, especially if you're in a city or somewhere that there's a lot of resources to look around locally for tips on marketing or accounting or like all that stuff that feels so daunting when you're just starting out. But I also love that you mentioned not taking a vacation, and I felt myself probably around year 3 realizing that the business can start to take over your life if you let it,
Mhm.
and I think I had this moment where I realized like I didn't leave academia where I was working 7 days a week to get into a business where I'm working 7 days a week, and so I've
Mhm.
sort of had to create that those boundaries for myself, especially because I have two little
Mhm.
kids. And
Mm.
so yeah, that is something for people to think about too as they're considering this kind of work, is you do have to be able to establish those rules, and whatever
Mm.
works for you is great, whether you're editing at 4 a.m. or at midnight, whatever your schedule, whatever you prefer is fine, but you do sort of have to figure out how to protect your time. Um,
Mhm.
so tell me more about if you're comfortable talking about your plans with the agency. Is
Mm.
it a situation where you have more work coming in than you can handle, and so you kind of want to send it out to freelancers?
That's the goal. Not currently. I do sometimes have more work than I can handle, and that's when I'll bring in a contractor, but I would like to have more consistently. Um, so I'm ramping up my marketing efforts to make sure that happens. Um, I heard you say in a different episode that you reached a point where you either had to decide between kind of an agency, like expanding, or kind of choosing what you ended up choosing, which is educating other editors. And I kind of feel this, I'm at the same crossroads where I just can't keep it up on my own. And I want a vision for the future. I'm reading this really good book right now called The E-Myth Revisited. It's about entrepreneurship. And I realized when I was reading it that I was like, I fell victim to exactly what the author was talking about, which is a lot of people, and a lot of people listening can probably relate. A lot of people go into business by themselves because they are tired of working for a boss and they just want to focus on the work. And the author calls this like the technician mindset, where like you just want to kind of put your head down and, like you said, with your red pen, just kind of like cross out and do the work. But what happens is that if you're not working on your business and you're just working in your business, it's really easy to get burnt out and you kind of lose sight of the vision, and there's nobody there to kind of manage the workflows. So that's kind of the role of the entrepreneur, is to work on those long-term goals. But what I found myself getting trapped in was that I was just doing the technician work, like the technical work, and I wasn't, growing the business. So I've fortunately been able to recognize that as the problem. And I'm sure a lot of other small business owners can relate. But to anybody out there who is thinking of transitioning to this kind of work, please just keep that in mind. Like, yeah, you'll be out of one situation that you weren't happy in, but if you're not careful, like you were just saying, Paulina, like you might end up in kind of the same situation, with no moderation. That like those managers, those bosses are there to provide guardrails, and when you own your own business, you have to provide the guardrails. So my family knows that they can expect my laptop to come out on vacation, but I definitely need to change that kind of habit.
Yeah, no, I totally, everything you're saying totally resonates with me, because I like, on the one hand, that's the beautiful thing about freelancing, where whether you're working for a publisher or an editing agency, or, you're getting all this work from these other companies and you're not really having to market yourself or do the client interaction. You can just put your head down, like you said, and focus on the editing, and you get the work, you do it, you turn it in. And at the same time, you're limited by how much time you have, by how many hours
Mm.
you can sit at the computer. And so I think I got to the point where I was starting to bring in my own private clients. I have to give a shout out to my friend Katie Ferris, who is she edits business research. She has a workshop called the Savvy Editrix, I think it is. And she that I watched that workshop, and in it she teaches you how to do cold email and how to raise your rates. And after I watched that, I was hitting consistently $10,000 months, which was amazing. I never thought I would certainly wouldn't be making that money as a professor, now, even now. Um, But I realized that like I was having to push myself really hard to do those projects and to bring in that kind of money. And I knew at that point that I had to scale somehow. And, you know, like you mentioned the other podcast where I talked about this fork in the road of agencies versus like a course. And I just knew I didn't want to, you know, be supervising other people. I'd preferred to go back into the teaching role. But I think you're absolutely right. Like once you do reach that level of success, you have to figure out, you know, either you're going to stay where you are and your income is going to be capped by the amount of time that you have because you're just one person, or you have to figure out which model you want to pursue to try to bring in more money. Or I will add that I think adding a coaching element into your business can help with that because you can charge a bit more for coaching or do group coaching. And that allows you to bring in some more money without, you know, cloning yourself or whatever. So, yeah, so this has been awesome. I love this conversation. We've touched on so many things that I haven't discussed with anyone else before, but so I ask everybody if you could give a couple of pieces of advice to people who are considering editing, what would you recommend? And I wonder if you could speak specifically to, since this is your background, could you speak specifically to people who are high school teachers or, you know, K through 12 teachers? What's a couple of pieces of advice that they could take away from this to decide if editing is right for them or how to get started?
Okay, to all my teachers out there, teaching is a scam. Okay, they rope you in. It's like culty almost. Like they get you emotionally attached to the students, like you were saying at the top of the podcast, Paulina, and you spend your own money on classroom supplies. You spend 7 days a week working. You spend hours before and after school prepping because you don't want to let the kids down. Don't kill yourself for capitalism. Okay. They are not out to help you. You need to help yourself. And those kids, they're going to make it through. You've made a really good impact already. There is life for you outside of teaching. I have met former teachers who are post office workers, real estate agents. They've gone into educational technology, some editors. My friend right now is applying to be an international student liaison for a university. Like there is hope for you. So that's my first piece of advice is you don't realize how toxic it is until you leave it. So you can definitely get out. But
I want to echo that 100%. It is a scam. It's a cult, and the institutions and the administrators will milk you until you have nothing left. So what was your second piece of advice?
I'm the kind of person that will like Google what to say when your partner says I love you, but you're not ready to say it back. It's like I have no shame in like asking the internet what to do, but that is probably the most important part of my success when I first started editing was reading like little ebooks about how to succeed on Upwork and making sure that I have all of the parts of my LinkedIn profile that are going to help me be found. And you're never going to be ready, I would say, to launch your business. But one thing that will make you feel ready is to have the knowledge and to have a little bit of savings that not only can you support your lifestyle, like make sure you have an emergency fund just in case, you know, you decide to transition to entrepreneurship early or you have like a low month or something, because there's a lot of bust and boom in freelancing, but also, you know, have some money that you can put into the business to pay for things like Paulina's class or a membership to the Editorial Freelancing Association or like, you know, travel expenses to go to that conference so you can meet other people in your area. Just, it'll give you some peace of mind.
Yeah, love it. You have so many great nuggets that I think people are going to really appreciate when they listen to this and take it away. So thank you so much for talking with me. And if anybody would like to get in touch with you or work with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, feel free to reach out to me. I'm Nicole Halper on LinkedIn, or you can email me at my business, Proofed and Proven, and that's editing@proofedandproven.com.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Nicole.
Thank you, Paulina. I'll talk soon.
If you're unhappy in academia and you think you might be a good editor or writing coach, check out my course, Becoming an Academic Editor. This digital course is paired with a 12-week group coaching program to support you through your decision to leave academia or not, and to start building a profitable and rewarding academic editing business. Learn more by going to acadiaediting.com/become an editor. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time.